Hi, we're here today with our friend Don Gainey, who's definitely one of our Arizona drag racing legends. And the people we're going to interview today, they're our legends, but in a different way. You know, we got people that race cars and promoted cars and built cars, but everybody had to have a place to take their car to race and race it safely. And Don is best known for being the guy. You know, originally, we knew him from Beeline Dragway, and then when Firebird International Raceway, now Wild Horse Pass, opened, Don transitioned and was part of that crew to help get that place going, and worked there for many years and developed a lot of friendships. But one thing in common, he's a car guy, and he loves cars. So, Don, you're an Arizona drag racing legend, and welcome to the interview.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. So, I know your background, but our viewers don't. Tell us about your first time going to a drag strip. Where were you?
I was in North Carolina. I grew up in South Carolina, and there was a drag strip that was close by us, and we used to go up there and go to do that. And I didn't race, but I had friends that did and everything. So that was where my first introduction into drag racing, kind of.
What was it like? I mean, you first got there. Can you remember was it excitement or the?
Yes, it was exciting. It's of course, back in the 60s and stuff, you know, they didn't have all the sophisticated equipment they have now. There's no railings on the side of the strips or anything. It was just open, and it was exciting and had fun.
Adventurous.
Adventurous, yeah.
Do you remember the name of the track?
No, I don't.
That's okay. There were a lot of them back then.
Yeah.
Came and went.
Yeah.
So you were interested in cars.
Yeah.
And that grew, and then did you ever have a chance to race one of those cars, or did you?
No, I have my car that I have now. When I was in service, I did take it to the drag strip in Florida when I was down there one time, and we took it out and I tried it and everything.
Well,
so.
Tell us about your. So you were employed by Uncle Sam for a lot of years, but you went into the main service.
Right.
Tell us about that.
I went in the Air Force in 1966. I went as everybody else, went to Amarillo, went to Lackland for basic, and then Amarillo for tech school, and then I got stationed at Tucson, Arizona. And so then I was stationed there for 4 years, and I had the opportunity to visit the drag strip in Tucson. And then when I got out, I came to Phoenix and started working with Lockheed Aircraft Service Company at Luke Air Force Base. And I worked there till around 81 when they closed down. Lockheed maintained the 104 Starfighter, and the Air Force pilots taught the German pilots to fly. And then they closed that down. The Germans didn't want to use the airplanes anymore because they were too old. So then I got a job with Honeywell, and I worked in the research and development facility there until I retired in 2010. And all those other years I was always messed around with cars. When Beeline closed, I had a friend, and many people might know guy named Pat Nalen. His dad was an old Indy racer, and his dad had bought the Duke Nalen.
All right.
He had bought a sprint car for his son, for Pat, and so I helped him work on his car, and we used to go to Manzanita a lot. So I've been around motorsports, some type of it, all my life, you know.
So you came to Phoenix for a job. How did you get involved? What was your first time going to Beeline? Do you remember that? Did you as a spectator?
I got started out there because I had been there, and I don't remember everything about it, but I remember I worked with a guy at Lockheed, and his name was Jim Boggs, and he had been working at Beeline, and he asked me one day, he says, "Hey, you think you'd like to work out there or something?" I said, "Sure." So I went out there, and that was in '70, and I've stayed there until that closed. And that's how I got introduced to being involved with it, but besides being a spectator.
So what were your memories of Beeline Dragway?
Oh God.
If I say, I mean, everybody that whether you're a racer or a spectator or
Yeah.
a participant, I mean a worker there, everybody has stories about it. They can always say, "Oh my gosh," But what I mean, just if I say Beeline, what do you think of?
The only thing that I really remember the incident we had was Gartley was here doing a match race, and we had a starter. His name was Jay something, I think it was, and Gartley was getting ready to make his run, and Jay went out there and grabbed the car to pull him back and pulled his parachute out. and Gartley was not happy. And I remember, I'll never forget that instance, And there's other things that a lot of people I knew that raced there. I got to know Bob Lefevre. I worked for him for a while when I was out of work for Lockheed. I got a job there and got to know a lot of people, as you did, and Bob DeYoung and everybody that raced there. Got to know a lot of people, and that's where I always like meeting people, talking to people. You learn a lot about them. It brings on a lot of friendships.
So, obviously, there's a lot of people have high regard for you because of all you did tech,
Yes.
and so as a tech guy, there had to be some things you looked at, you scratched your head, and people's interpretation of rules, whether there be class rules or safety rules.
Yeah.
Did anything stick out in your mind that you just basically,
No, I only remember the one thing that I do remember that I learned. I never could figure out. There was a guy named Farmer. He used to work for HRA. And he showed me. He says you could always figure out what kind of rear end they had by counting the rotation of the wheels and looking at the drive shaft. He says, you look at that, you can tell kind of what gear ratio they got, because some of them were limited. You couldn't have this, you couldn't have that, and I remember that specifically. He showed me how to do that, and back then it was just fun, and nothing really stood out in my mind. As you see crazy stuff no matter where you go. Till this day, you can go do tech and you find people come in and their batteries are supposed to be supported by a specific means, and people just don't know. Oh, I've been driving that like that for I don't know how long. It's okay like that. It'll run, But you just remember stuff like that. But most of the people were pretty good. You could, spot something and tell them they need to fix it, and you usually didn't have a problem.
A lot of them could fix it on the spot, even if they had to take some baling wire and wrap it down and tie it down. As long as it wasn't moving, the battery was safe.
Yeah.
Definitely through the years you saw, doing tech, you saw start off with the AHRA, then you went to NHRA, and there's a whole different set. The basic common sense rules should apply to both, but you went to NHRA, the rules were a little bit more specific.
Yes.
And because you have NHRA insurance and at a track, you really have to probably enforce the rules a lot harder. The basic safety rules at HRA, it was more of a sportsman
event categories.
Association, excuse me.
Yes.
When you would do the events, did you tech ever have to tech any of the show cars for an HRA or AHRA, or they pretty much?
Yes.
So what were those guys like? Can you remember teching somebody's car that you were nervous to tech because this guy was this guy? Or
I remember one instance that I went over to me and Bob DeYoung and I can't remember the other guy's name now. Bob went over to run an event at Orange County, and I went along with him, and Danny Gracia and what was his name? Chloe Fitzgerald,
yeah.
They were packed, and they came over and asked me. He says, "Hey, we need some help teching cars. We're all backed up," and so I helped them over there, teching some of the cars and stuff over there, But I never really had a problem, no matter whose car it was. I just went in with the thoughts. I don't care. I don't care who the driver is, or the person is, where they're at on the ladder. We've got to. It's supposed to be specifically like this in a certain way, and I tried to treat everybody the same way and follow the rules for everybody, So I didn't get really it didn't really bother me whose car it was.
You
or
could say
anything.
no to anybody.
Yeah, right.
You were equal opportunity.
Yeah, if you approach them in a professional way, most of them are really considerate and understand and go along with it.
The the great thing about AHRA is people could basically show up, and we had classes, but you didn't. You would probably be at sometimes people come to a national event and never really run before.
Right.
And you'd have to help them pick a class.
Right.
How did you do that? I mean, what did you?
Well, back then most of it was like we didn't have the brackets
Right.
like we do today.
Right.
It was class cars, so mostly it was all pounds per cubic inch, and you kind of figured that out. And you just have to look at them and say, oh, you can't have this, you can have this, and you can't have that. You just had to work through it and weeded out what they could and couldn't have and what class they fall into.
So you were their introduction to drag racing 101.
Yeah, right.
You remember anybody coming through the first time when they were first getting started that went on and did pretty well, or did?
I'm trying to think. Well, most of the local people guys like Jesse and Joe Freeman, they ran NHRA. They ran national events up until recently. Joe Faulkner, he was a great racer. A lot of guys moved on to nicer classes and everything and just kept going. But I can't place anybody right off the bat that really, went all out, went anywhere,
Yeah. But you did see people, their passion.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if they only raced at Beeline or they only raced at Firebird.
Right.
You saw it when they first started.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, before we transition into Firebird, is there any event, the Beeline event, that when it was over, you said, I can't believe we got through the night or the day? Something that stands out.
We saw some late hours there. We were there late hours, and somehow or another, we always made it work. Got through the event okay and everything, but we had some late hours at some of them, but most of them went fine, went good. There were a couple of instances where they did have some accidents, and with like Jim Basco's event and stuff like that, and there was a lot of people. And I remember like Trip Shoemake was always there, and he drove a lot, and he went on to be very good in his profession. And there's just you hear people, you get with people and you start talking about old times, and then a lot of names come up that you remember that you can't think of right off the top of your head.
And I was thinking at our recent drag race reunion where we did the Drag Races Hall of Fame inductions, we had Larry Christopherson there. Right. And I was thinking this morning on the way here how he was he was there. He was our guy. I mean, but he did. Yeah. On a national level, he was one of the players.
Right.
And, as we like to see, Larry Christopherson, his name itself, the longest name in drag racing. Yeah. or the biggest name in drag racing, I believe is what we called it. Yeah. But we had a lot of great races like that. I think the excitement of Saturday night, Beeline Dragway. Those were always fun to look forward to. Yeah. Mickey Thompson. Yep. And all the drivers you saw come through that, even the out-of-state drivers that went on to be. Yeah. To do well, that really Beeline was one of where they cut their teeth. Yeah. The Beeline closes. Right. Rick Lynch unfortunately became ill, and for whatever reason, a lot of publicity and a lot of different reasons, but the dynamics of the track closed. Right. When did you first hear or know that there was going to be a Firebird?
Tom Sands called me.
Okay.
And said they were going to start up a track, and Bernie Partridge had approached him and wanted to know if he could put together a group to come out and help Charlie Allen get the track started. It was in 1983. And he contacted me, and I said, sure, I'd be glad to come out, So I came out, and I helped him get it started, and I just ended up being there for 20 years.
Blink. It happened. Yes. So everybody has their own recollection of the first race at Firebird. It was packed. Yes. Yeah. It was everything everybody thought it would be. Yeah. But only longer. Yeah. What do you remember about the first night? There
were a lot of cars, and it was really neat because especially because they got it going, but they started in a little trailer as they're using as a tower for their timing clocks and stuff, and then later that developed into a nice tower, and everything. But it was packed, and we had lots of people. But it just, we got through the night, and it seemed like it ran okay. And I don't remember exactly how many cars were there. Somebody else can give you all that information, but I know there were a lot of cars there.
Probably about 700 cars.
Yeah.
And a normal big event, you'd be happy to get 400 or 500 cars.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. You Firebird developed into a big show track.
Yes.
And so you worked with NHRA at some of the big. You worked at the national events for them as a local crew, or
right.
How did that work?
I worked for them I worked with them for tech for a while and everything, and then later on, after I retired from Firebird, I still work the national event once a year with them, but I don't do as I took on a lighter job, let's put it like that, because I got tired of bending over and rolling up chutes. I didn't want to work up on the starting line. I didn't like that. I like to be down at the top end when they come through, and you get to see the drivers, see the frustration on them when things aren't going for them, and you can tell when they're not happy when they'll just drive right past you and keep going. And so I enjoyed doing that, and like I said, I still work there, the national event, once a year with them, and then I help Johnny Moto do the parking for the divisional races and stuff like that. So I'm still involved with it somewhat, but not to a big extent like I used to be, because it took up a lot of my time when I was working there, because I was holding down like 3 jobs basically. I had my regular job. I was in the Air National Guard. I had to go 1 weekend a month for training, and then, as you know, with the drag strip, it's not during the week. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. And when I was with Charlie also, we worked the IHBA drag races.
So you travel.
We went to California, California to 2 events over there, and go to
over there,
Pudding Stone
and Castaic.
And Castaic, yeah. And so that was, and I'm lucky. My wife stuck with me. A lot of times it used to be our anniversary, and guess where I'd be? Pudding Stone or Castaic. And
we're all blessed.
Yeah, we're blessed with our wives.
Yes, we are. Amen to that. So you got to work with Charlie.
Yep.
You got to work with Rick Lynch.
Yep.
2 amazing people in their own worlds.
Yes.
There's a lot of stories that go on about either one of them, but they both did well.
Yes.
It takes a different person to be a track promoter.
Yes.
They're not always appreciated.
Right.
Sometimes they earn that badge.
Yes.
But other times it's just people don't understand really what it takes to do it. What was your biggest surprise about the difference between Charlie and Rick? Did you see a difference right away?
Charlie was more. Rick was a business person also, but Charlie was really knowledgeable. He planned everything out. He was a real business person. He figured out ways of making money, putting on events and stuff, and good shows, And I give them both credit for what they did. They started something, and it's just too bad that things didn't keep probably going at Beeline, and stuff like that. But who knows what would have happened down the road. And then it's just too bad that I just personally right now I hope that the Wild Horse can keep going, because it's a good facility, and I hate to see it get lost, but we know it's going to happen. But it's just bad because the sport in Arizona, or shall I say Phoenix area, is just gone downhill. There's no participation close by, as many race cars and stuff we have here. It's too bad they're all sitting in garages.
A lot of cars, but no real structure where to run them and
Correct.
On a regular basis. I can certainly have a feel for that.
Yeah.
But, the track is slated to close after the national event in 2023.
Right.
All sorts of reasons, and the main thing is to remember that people have to remember that the track, it's been there in operation longer than Beeline and Orange County were put together.
Yeah.
It's had a long run, and things do change, and hopefully there's groups of people working to try to get work with people to get new track. Phoenix being the 5th largest population center in the country, you would think that it will happen, and we kind of have to be positive it will.
Yeah.
A lot of memories, but so we had some crazy specialty events. I can remember
the bug out.
The Firebird was the bug out. I don't know what were the craziest things that Rick Lynch ever did, but I can remember Billy Carter with the Billy Beer Night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The President Carter's brother.
Yes.
I can remember a lot of the Evel Knievel or the different jumpers, or the guys with the go-karts, Rocket Rod Phelps,
right.
and all the what were the craziest events that you can remember?
We had quite a bit. The guy with the go-kart jumping, and the other event that I remember well was Evel Knievel night, when he was coming down the drag strip, and was it the Wells brothers came out of the desert on a motorcycle, running by alongside him or something, and he wasn't happy there.
Well, Gary Wells was
Gary
one.
Wells, yes, and that was one thing, and the airplane that landed on the drag the stunt pilot, I can't remember his name.
Art
Scholl.
Yeah, Art
yes.
Scholl, the Pennzoil
Chipmunk.
Right.
Landed out there on the runway, and he was doing tricks over the runway and stuff like that.
Fly upside down over the finish line and snag the ribbon and all that.
Yeah.
So those are some great events, and the one thing about a national event, people have to fill time. When it came to national events, and I always thought AHRA was a better sideshow for filling that time than NHRA.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, at Firebird we had the interesting events, but the one that sticks in everybody's mind, is like you said, was the bug out. And you describe that to me. What was that about?
There were so many bugs there, and nobody knew where they came from. I don't know if they ever figured out what it was, but it was just, the weather was just right for them, or whatever it was. We couldn't run the cars basically because they were on the drag strip, and it was just so slippery, and you couldn't see in front. It was just, they were all over the place. It was just covered with bugs. And I don't remember if we even finished the event or what. I don't think so.
I believe the event got
postponed
until the bugs went away.
Yeah.
Little black beetles.
Yes.
The craziest things you see you've had rainouts before, and of course we'd always have to sometimes the dust storms would blow through. We'd have to wait for those to go away, and the track would be a little bit dusty. You'd have to clean that off. But certainly you've had the opportunity to work for at some of the most memorable times at the events we've had here in drag racing in Phoenix history or Arizona history.
Yeah.
But you're more than that. You're a dad and a grandfather, and you're a car guy.
Yeah.
And I know that you tell me about your pride and joy, your car that you have.
I have a 1968 Torino GT that I've had since 1969, and it's been about 4 years ago now that I 3 years ago, somewhere roughly that area, I completed a restoration on it, and I went through it completely, did a rotisserie on it and everything, and it took me about 3 or 4 years to do it, which it took me a long time, longer than I expected, because I was waiting on my mechanic, and he went to sleep on the engine, I think, and it took me a while to get it back. But it took me about 3 years to restore it, and that's my pride.
I heard you did in alphabetical order. You did Chevy, Dodge, then Ford, and Ford was like No. Okay.
I've been a Ford guy all my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
The car, I know for a fact, I've seen it. It's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
You've a lot of notoriety because of that. I've seen different magazine articles and videos that you've been in. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It shows, but I think that's an example of how meticulous you are, and when you set out to do a chore, that certainly, you talk about the service, you give to our country. Number one, thank you for your service. Also, you've, the jobs you did at the drag strips, I know for a fact that people, when you told people something, they didn't take it personally from you because you did in such a way.
Right.
But you watched out for their safety, and that's
Right.
another
Yeah.
thank you for your service there.
Yeah.
Countless people got started that probably would have been intimidated if somebody else would have been the tech guy.
Yeah.
You work with some great people.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to be remembered by?
Well, I took over from Joe Thaden, and Joe was a track operator manager at the time, and after Craig Hutchinson. And Joe was working full-time at the track, working weekends at the track, and he kind of got burned out on it, and he approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing the race directing. And I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And I don't remember how long I'd been there. I'd been working in tech before that, and then I don't remember exactly when it was, but then I took over doing race directing, and I did that until I left. And I had some great face-to-face stuff with the racers and stuff, and I really appreciate all those guys over those years, because if it hadn't been for them coming out and supporting the facility, it wouldn't be what it is. And I just met a bunch of great guys, and I still like to see them when I go do work the national event or divisional race. I get to meet a lot of them again. You don't see them very often, and I just like seeing them and talking to them. So I just hope everybody remember me for trying to treat everybody the same. When people would come up with me, I've had run-ins with a lot of racers and stuff, and as a racer they come up and they're all upset at the time the event, whatever occurred, and later on, they would come back and we could talk and they would apologize, and I could, empathize with them, say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry it happened like this, but this is the way it happened. And so
I just can't see you ever. I've known you all these years. I can't ever see you being mad.
No.
I think that's one thing that most people say, that you're even keeled. You were just like you have to enforce what was going on,
right?
But you didn't make it personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people appreciate about you and will remember you by. And you still got a lot of stuff to do. You're not done yet. But,
no.
We get to see you cruise your car every once in a while. We've you talk about new drag strip. I'm sure that you'll be one of the first people out there to check it out.
Yeah.
If we get a new drag strip, it's kind of like right now it's the field of dreams for us.
Right.
Build it and they will come. There are more cars in the valley than I think in Arizona than ever before. They're just because of different tastes and designs, and there's more fragmented classes. But if they would ever show up all at once, you'd have 1,000 cars at a track.
Yep.
That'd be crazy.
Yes.
And hopefully you'll be there the first time to tech everybody in.
I hope so too.
Okay. Don, we really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to come.
And and guess what, buddy? You're here in Arizona Drag Racing Legend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.